Papa Geoff's America program is made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Thank you. If you'd like to buy Papa Geoff a cup of coffee, visit us on the web at support.papageoffusa.com. Papa Geoff's America, continuing the conversation, one podcast at a time. Live from the OG Radio Studios in Houston, Texas, broadcasting around the country and around the world, welcome to the Papa Geoff's America program. We're continuing the conversation one podcast at a time. We're the talk radio show podcast with real conversations about real things: human interest, society, positivity, mindfulness, health and wellness, good stuff. The stuff and things that you want to talk about. Inspiring guests, insightful commentary, and what would a day be without Papa Geoff's old guy humor, right? Because we're all in this together. So with one sort of kind of good eye, that special old guy humor, and definitely a face for radio, it's OG time. Here's Papa Geoff. Continuing the conversation one podcast at a time, I'm Papa Geoff, and this is Papa Geoff's America. Now, this is a story about a mother's love of her son, and of the loss, and of the legacy. I'm going to introduce you to Shanda Estrada. She's going to share her personal story that led her to start Ryan's Reach. Now, it's a sad story, but it's going to leave you with hope, because we're all in this together. The Papa Geoff's America program, continuing the conversation, one podcast at a time. It is 38 degrees and raining at the OG Radio Studios in H-Town, Space City, Houston, Texas, the city with no limits. This is the Papa Geoff's America program on the OG Radio Network. Shanda Estrada, Ryan's Reach, next. I'm Papa Geoff, and this is OG Radio, on the web at papageoffusa.com. Everybody, welcome back to Papa Geoff's America. Thanks for coming back. Our guest today is Shanda Estrada. Shanda is a mom from Northern Nevada, and she is the founder of Ryan's Reach. And we're going to tell you all about that. Actually, we're going to have her tell you all about that, because this is about her and Ryan's Reach today, not about me, because you guys know about me. And if you get me started, I'll just keep going on for the whole length of the show. So we don't want to do that. But we're going to have Shanda talk to us today. Shanda, welcome to the program. We appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, gosh. Thank you for having me. I was, when I got your message, I don't know, I just felt so honored. And it was just one of those times where you think everything kind of fell in the right place, because I had been doing some things for Ryan's Reach, and I had actually been thinking about, and I hadn't called it Ryan's Reach, but far before my son, who was killed when he was 33 years old. And he was the most beautiful little boy. And he was just so sweet. And I had a tumultuous childhood, to say the least. And so when I had Ryan and I kind of grew up together. And I know that's not ideal, but that's what happened. I think when I held Ryan in my arms for the first time, I don't think that I had ever held a baby before. And I certainly hadn't changed a diaper or anything like that. And we learned everything together. And he was just my sidekick for quite some time. And, Ryan and his dad, our marriage didn't work out. We were young. We were very young. And things just didn't mesh. So I got married again. And that did not work out as well, but it lasted a little bit longer, and it had, I think it had an effect on Ryan. There were some things that happened within that marriage, within that time frame that he was with Ryan, that I didn't find out about until, Ryan was in his 20s, that I feel a lot of guilt about. just to be clear, not molestation, not physical abuse, but
Right.
bordering on that. And it broke my heart, because the first thing I thought when Ryan told me, and you know what, I'm just going to be transparent. What happened is when I was gone, I was working graveyards, and my daughter and my son and then my two children that were with this man were in his care. He would have Ryan hold books in both hands, like, a couple books in each hand, which is a little difficult for a 5, 6, 7-year-old child.
Yeah.
And he would pull his pants down. So I didn't know about that until Ryan was in his 20s. And I cannot even tell you the devastation I felt. Like, what was I doing at that moment? I mean, I was at work,
Yeah.
but when I came home, was I tired? Was I cranky? Like, hey, Ryan, pick up your toys. And I didn't know. And as time went on and I found things out that were happening, and more things were happening with me abuse wise, I, got out of that. But the thing is that this person never left me alone. So at one point I came home, I think Ryan was 15, and there was a note, said, Mom, I can't do it anymore. I'm going to Dad's. And it just broke my heart, because he was right. This man, did a lot of damage, did a lot of, I mean, you would call it stalking. Back then we didn't really have a name for it.
Yeah.
And so he went to his dad's, and his dad hadn't had a child in quite a while. He had a new family, and he had I think a baby on the way, or maybe it was a couple years old at this point, but he had not had a child and raised that child up to, tweens and then teens. And that makes a difference. So I don't want to blame him at all. But, Ryan was a quiet child. And Ryan, just put it out there, he was gay. And I knew this. Before he even said anything. I just knew it.
Right.
And finally, my daughter said something to me when Ryan was probably like 17 or 18 about it. Something in the realm of like, he doesn't want to tell you, Mom, or something like that. So I thought, I sat on it for a couple of days. And then I thought, no, I do not want him to be stressed out about this. So I went and said, hey, Ryan, I know. And I don't, do you think I care? I don't care. I love you.
Right.
And it went on from there. But during the time Ryan was with his dad, I saw little bits of some mental illness coming through. And I kind of laid that out there with his dad, but he's like, no. And I get it. No one wants to think that your child has a mental illness. I get that.
Right.
But I saw that. And then I thought, well, maybe I'm wrong. So it went along. And then Ryan, somehow, I don't know how, he became involved in drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And what I believe now is he had the mental illness. He was hearing voices. The drugs made it go away, or made it just kind of level out. And, interestingly, I had an aunt, and this was, oh my goodness, back in the 70s. She had schizophrenia, which is what Ryan had. And she was the sweetest lady, and she used to sew my sister and I the most beautiful dresses. And she was my grandpa's sister. But I remember one time taking a walk with her, and we were walking back to my grandma and grandpa's house, and we sat under this big tree on a corner house. And she said to me, and I thought nothing of it at the time, Shanda, no one's going to find us here. And it wasn't until years later when someone told me, what she had, I'm like, I connected the dots there.
Yeah.
And, my son would often tell me, I mean, I used to, when I would pass people on the street that clearly had a mental illness, and we all have, the ones that are waving their arms, or they're just acting in a way that we know is not normal. And I mean, 10, 20 years ago, I probably would have had a chuckle. But now it just, I honestly, I instantly pray for them.
Yeah.
Because my heart breaks. And, Ryan, he had this mental illness where he heard voices. And when his dad tried to help him over and over, and then his grandma, she lives in Long Beach, and she helped him. She tried so hard. But here's the thing with older kids, kids that are above 18, you can't make them get help. I mean, you can't. You can try to get them into a facility and then hope it sticks, or hope they stay. But it's a challenge. And that's what we went through. He was in one facility after another, but he would leave, and we couldn't make him stay. And then he would be on the streets, and we wouldn't hear from him for a huge chunk of time. And it was really hard, not knowing, like, is he dead? Is he cold? Yeah. Is he hungry? Not even, you can't even reach out to him, because he had a million cell phones, in the whole time that the past like 5-6 years, he would get one and then it'd be gone. And so we just, after a while, you just start hoping for the best.
Yeah.
And when I moved out here to Reno, I'm not sure how it happened, but he got in touch with me, and I said, come out here, because you know what, you think in that moment, I can fix him. I can do it.
Sure.
And I remember we had bought our house, but it wasn't ready for us yet. And so I was still living at my mom and dad's. And so he came, and it was very, very close to Christmas. And then on Christmas Eve, he left, like in the middle of the night. And what do you do to stop him? I mean, he's over the age of 18.
Yeah.
So then we moved into our home, and he stayed here, and we gave him use of our truck so he could drive to and from work. But nothing ever lasted. And my husband would be in the garage early in the morning. We have a bunch of like workout equipment out there, and he would see like Ryan come home, and he would look through the glass and see like, oh gosh, he was doing something in the car he shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
He was doing some drugs at the time. And I can't have that in my house.
Yeah.
I can't. And it was heartbreaking to say, Ryan, I love you so much, but I can't do this in my house. This cannot be in my house. And he went out there, and he went to the Salvation Army. They have a program, but he didn't last in that. And pretty soon I would just see him, just every once in a while. And it's hard as a mom that, you love your child so much and there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. I mean, I can invite that into my home and have the drugs and all of that and uncertainty, but I can't. We all have to draw our lines. Mm-hmm. And I don't allow drugs in my home, and no matter what. And so he ended up eventually going back to his dad's, he lives in Arizona. And his dad, excuse me, his dad said, I think I can help him. So he went back down there, but then he got in trouble for breaking and entering into his dad's house. They had cameras and everything. And his dad saw him like rifling through drawers and things like that. So he called the police, and I backed him up 100%. Like, maybe this will be Ryan's rock bottom.
Yeah.
So he was arrested. He went to jail. He was there for a little bit. They diagnosed him, everything. They realized that he had mental illness. And he got, I guess you would call it dry there. I mean, he got completely clean, but it didn't help his mental illness.
Yeah.
Because the drugs went away, the drugs were out of his system, but the mental illness stayed. And even though they would give him medication for that, he would take it maybe initially, and then he would feel okay. But there's still that little bit of mental illness kind of coming through that asks that person like, oh, what are they putting in that medicine they're giving you? And, things like that. And makes them think erratically. But he ended up going back to Long Beach, which is where his grandmother has lived. And, so Southern California, which is where he grew up until he was 4. And he lived on the streets there. And I remember thinking, well, at least it's warm there. I mean, here
True.
he's going to freeze. But,
yeah,
and I would
Reno Reno has the winter.
Right?
That's for sure. One of the main reasons why we relocated from Reno here to Houston was hashtag no more snow.
Right. Yes. And so, and I'm going to be completely transparent here and say that when you're dealing with that, when you're trying to fix something or someone that it's beyond what you can do, once you've reached that point where you realize like, wow, I truly cannot do anymore. And someone else is like, oh, I'll do it. You are just relieved.
Yeah.
Like, okay, here you go. And that's a guilt I will always live with, even though I know there's nothing, I don't think there's anything I could have done. But Ryan moved back to Long Beach, and there it just continued. And he would go to his grandma's house every once in a while for like a shower or something like that. And she'd say, hey, let me get you, we're going to take you here to get you this help. And he would entertain that thought while he was wanting to take the shower and get the hot meal in his belly and all that. And once that had happened, he'd be like, no, he would say, I just wanted to see what you would say. And so it was hard. And then, gosh, I'm going to be honest. I knew that the day would come where I would get that phone call that said he was gone.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, it's like you're preparing yourself, but there's no way you can prepare yourself.
Mm-hmm.
No way. And I was watching my granddaughter in Stockton, and I just happened to be near the phone. My phone is typically off a lot of the times because I tutor children, so I have it off, and I always forget to turn it back on. So it was off. And I just happened to be like in the right place at that time. And I saw the phone, and it said my ex-husband's name. And I knew. Before I picked up that phone, I knew. And in fact, I answered the phone with, what happened? I'm like, how is Ryan?
Yeah.
And he said, where are you? And I said, no, tell me now. I mean, I was frantic. I knew. And he just said words that will like go through my mind till the day I die. Ryan was killed. And Ryan was killed by a hit and run driver. And we talked a little bit, and I cried, and he did all the things that happens in the movie. Like, oh my gosh, my baby. I mean, all those things you feel. And it was so hard. I can't even tell you how hard it was. And,
yeah.
And, and then his dad had said, I asked him, I said, well, the hit and run, what happened? Oh my gosh, someone hit him and left. I mean, I'm the person out there when there's a dog in the middle of the street running, I'm stopping traffic so I can help that dog. So to hit a person and leave, I can't comprehend.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he goes, Shanda, I don't want anyone else's life to be ruined because of Ryan's choices. And initially that made sense to me. It did. And so I kind of let it simmer there for a couple of weeks. And then it came up where the things Ryan had on him, which turned out to be just a very cheap necklace he was wearing, but I needed that. Mm-hmm. And his dad, didn't want any of the remains or anything. And Ryan was very clear when he was growing up that he thought the earth was overpopulated and he had all these things that he said, but it was very clear that he wanted to be cremated.
Yeah.
So we went ahead and did that, which was very difficult for me. It was very hard. That's not me, but that I know that's what he wanted. So we did that. And then getting the remains was, I don't want to say a challenge, but it took a bit. And then I got connected with the detective who was handling Ryan's case. And I remember calling him, and I left a message just crying, and I mean, just sobbing, to the point where I had to call back to leave my phone number because I was pretty sure he didn't get it. But I just had to know who would leave him there dead or dying. And the detective has been awesome. He's been wonderful. And it's just not a place I'd ever thought I'd be, talking to coroners, getting mail from them, talking to detectives about the impact and the paint chips that would still be on my child's body. That's not a place I ever thought I'd be. And even though I anticipated this, but that's where I'm at. And for quite some time prior to Ryan's dying, I had thought, you know what, I really want to help people that, like Ryan, with a mental health disorder, and or homeless, or whatever that means. And helping people is not something that comes easily to me.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I was like, I think 12 or 13, my friends and I would make, it was Valentine's cards, and we would go to at the time it was called an old folks home, and we would just go there and give them out and listen to them talk. And this was my friend Jolene and I, and so helping is something I've always, it's been easy for me to do. It's what I want to do. And my mom was a victims advocate in Reno, and she was the first victims advocate. And she passed 4 years ago. But so helping people is just something that comes, it's what I need to do. And the minute, I am telling you, within minutes of me hearing of Ryan's passing, and we didn't hear about it until 3 days after it happened. They had to locate us through his fingerprints, and then they contacted his dad. They found his dad, and then his dad found me, called me.
Yeah.
I knew, nope, no more waiting, Shanda. I am doing this. And it's going to be called Ryan's Reach. And it just came, it was just there. And I'm sure a lot of my family and friends were thought, oh, she's really feeling this despair right now. She's got to do this. She's talking about it. But I let it kind of sit there for probably about 6 weeks until I'm like, you know what, this pain, this heartache, this guilt is killing me. I got to do something.
Yeah.
So I just started kind of thinking of ways I could help other people. And then something kind of landed in my lap. Someone had reached out via, what was it? Facebook Marketplace, saying like, gosh, I'm really cold. I'm trying to get back on my feet, but I don't have this and this and this, and anything is appreciated. So I reached out to that person. It actually took like a week, and he messaged me back, and I said, listen, I'm going to get these things for you. He needed a bike to get around, and like a camping stove, and just different types of things. And my dad had passed 3 days after I got the news of Ryan, which was just like, I was grieving so much for my son. And then my dad passed, and I was grieving for him, but it was so hard to grieve for two people at one time. And obviously most of the grief goes towards your child.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of guilt there on, like, my dad was with my mom, and that's what mattered. And I know that's where he wanted to be, but that was hard. But I brought this man, we met, at a safe location, and I gave him all the things that he needed. And I just sat there and I just talked to him for a second. And he just shared a little bit, like, he said he does have a daughter in the area, but he doesn't want her to know the situation he's in. And so that's where he's at. And he was initially downtown, but now he's more in it's in a nice, much more nice area, the Collin Ranch area.
Mm-hmm.
And because he was tired of things getting stolen from him and all that. So, I gave him all these things, and I shook his hand, and we kind of like parted ways. And then I started thinking, what else can I do? I heard from him again on Christmas, and he just said Merry Christmas. And I said, how are you doing? Can I bring you some food? And he said, of course. So I did. I loaded up some stuff and brought him a whole bunch of food and napkins and just all the stuff that I thought he might be able to use. And when I asked him how he was, he said, well, I'm feeling pretty isolated right now. The people I came down here with. And what I have learned is that when you are homeless, you tend to go in a group. You get your group of people, and that does make you feel safe, much more safe. But his group had kind of abandoned him. So he was feeling, as he put it, isolated. And I hear that word isolated, and I immediately go to, oh my gosh, mental illness.
Right.
And so I said, well, do you like to read? And he said that he did. So I asked him what he liked to read, and it kind of paired really well with things my dad liked to read. So I went and grabbed some books of my dad, and I brought them down, and he was just so grateful. And honestly, this just helping someone is, I don't know, I can't tell you the feeling that I get from it. And I have a pretty busy schedule with all my students, but I just want to carve out as much time as I can for our homeless neighbors. And I went today, I've done a couple of, a few reaches, and I'll bring food down and just kind of pass it out till I'm out. And I'm out pretty quickly.
Yeah,
but
I believe that. Yeah.
Yes, but during that time, I engage in conversation. And I just today, in fact, I was passing out some like breakfast burritos to some folks. And then I saw another person kind of sitting by themselves. And I talked to the first three people. I said, hey, tell me why you're down here, if you're okay with that. And they did. And, a lot is they just like to, they're with each other in groups. They can stay. There is a homeless shelter downtown
Mm-hmm.
that does seem to really cater to their needs. But again, there's that theft. There's a lot. I hate to say it, but they'll steal the socks off the next person if they can.
Yes.
So it's a little scary to stay in that place. And I was talking to this other gentleman by himself, and he just got out of jail early December, and he was telling me a story. And when someone tells me their story, I have no emotion on my face. I do not want them to feel like, oh, I just offended her. Or, no, you tell me, and I will be okay with whatever you say. And he said that he had a girlfriend, and she was what did he call her? A working girl.
Okay.
And and that she had taken his money, and then she left him, and this and that. And so here he is. It's his third day out on the street, and he has, a jail record behind him. And he goes, I don't have my ID. I don't have my social. I couldn't get work if I tried. And I said, that's really good to know. I'm like, because I want to find out about that. And we talked for a little bit more. And I just said, you are worthwhile. What happened in your past, your prison record does not define who you are right now.
Right.
You go out and you blaze a trail, and you become who you are supposed to be. And I ended up at St. Vincent's, which is a homeless shelter. And I thought, I'll go down that way. If you go down 4th Street, and I'll do that. I'll start driving, where can I find people? and I'll stop if I see just one person walking. And I was running after him like, hey, do you want something hot to eat? And so I was out there, and I was giving out just, the burritos I had and some drinks. And I was talking to these gentlemen, and one of them said, you want to talk to the person who runs the shelter. And I actually had no intentions of going in there, but she came out and talked to me, and I really got some invaluable information. And what's really interesting is right now we house, let's see, the veterans and disabled are housed in a different area.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest are housed in a tent, like a huge tent, a little bit down the street. So in total, we house 380, 400 homeless people every night. And there's actually, there's never been there isn't a time where there's not enough room. You can come. But coming in March, I guess the city of, our city has decided that they want everyone in one place. So they're building this new place that is going to house I think it's 4,000 or 5,000. So that's a jump from 400 to 4,000 or 5,000. So we're going to be pulling from like Fernley, Fallon, and all these different areas. And, I said, I'm happy to volunteer. I really am. I'm happy to volunteer. But there is a place where people can get a meal, and they have resources where they can get an ID, their social, and even have help with a resume. And if they want, like if they need a bus pass back to where they live in North Dakota, they'll get a one-way ticket there.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have a huge amount of resources here. But here's the thing. What about our Ryans? Our ones that are, I don't want to say beyond the hope of helping, because you never want to think that, but that's where we are. The Ryans who don't want any help. They're happy. I don't want to say happy, but where they're at is where they're comfortable, and they don't want that help. So it's almost like we're providing a type of hospice care for these individuals. And that's kind of where I'm at. Because that's where Ryan is at.
We're kind of just making them comfortable in the environment that they feel comfortable in.
Exactly. Yes. And I mean, Ryan wasn't going to get help.
Yeah.
He didn't think he needed it. He said that time and time again, I'm fine. He would even say, the drugs make me better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure I'm not the only parent who's heard that. And it's very distressing because you want to make them better, but you can't. So let me help you where you're at now. And that's kind of where Ryan's Reach comes in. Instead of meeting them where I want to be, or where society wants them to be, I meet them where they are at. And then I give help from there. And my help includes conversation. Today I sat on the sidewalk full of Cheeto crumbs, and I just sat there and listened to this gentleman tell me his story, and I sat there for a good 15 minutes, and I think that's what they need. They need to know that there's some of us out there that care enough to take the time to just sit down and listen. And we may or may not be able to help, but I can absolutely offer encouraging words, and I can give you something to drink, and I can give you something hot to eat. And I just gave you a little bit of companionship, which is huge. Almost more important than the meals at times.
And I think to a lot of these people, that's at least where they're at in the moment. That's an awesome thing to have happen, that someone would take the time to care, because I can remember from my paramedic days in Reno, and I know these facilities very well that you're speaking of, the what we used to call the men's drop-in center, and that whole complex there on 4th Street and Record Street. And that's the complex, guys. If you're unfamiliar with the Reno area, this particular area is the men's drop-in center, the women's drop-in center, which is their fancy name for shelter,
Right.
and there was a family shelter there as well, and it was also on the same grounds as the Reno Sparks Gospel Mission.
Right.
And across the street there, on Record Street, was the St. Vincent's. At the time that I was there, that's where they served meals. And I don't know if their shelter program was at that particular location, but in the years that I was a paramedic in Reno, they during the winter they would open what they used to call the overflow shelters. And because Reno being very cold, and we would have cold and freeze injuries that we would respond to from people that were homeless. And there, I won't get into the terminology, but um there were some very crude terms that police, fire, and EMS, we all know, have odd senses of humor just because of part of the
Yeah.
job. But
Right.
and we would see a lot. But it's a difficult area. And Fourth Street is an area that Reno is trying to revamp, and has been for a number of years, and trying to, shall we say, improve the look of the area. And
Right.
Fourth Street, in at least in that one particular area of Record Street, and for several blocks around, would be where, if you were in a large city like Los Angeles or perhaps Seattle, Portland, or whatever, that would be known as their Skid Row. And in the days that I was working downtown, you people everybody has a story. And to hear some
Yes.
of these people's stories, it's like Shanda said, if you just take the time to listen, they some of those stories are amazing. People with with massive levels of education, and people that
Yeah.
had more than I would ever aspire to have. And they're there. Now there is a population that is homeless because they want to be. And I think the percentage is rather low. And certainly mental illness and homelessness can sometimes run kind of as cousins. They can be in the same reality, shall we say, together. But they're these people are not dirty people. These are not mean people. These should not be forgotten people.
No.
And I interviewed a young lady several weeks back. Her name is Cheyenne Abelt, and she has a group called Cheyenne and Company. It's a band, and they actually have a new EP coming out. Um, but one of her title tracks that released in November was called Crazy Mary. And Crazy Mary talks about a person that, her name is Mary, and she has mental illness. And it talks about the plight of that. And it talks about, and Shanda, just talking to you, it reminded me of that interview that I had with Cheyenne, because Cheyenne talked about, she's in San Diego, and she talked about volunteering and feeding the homeless people and such. And she was put in charge that, because they had a lot of people volunteering that day, and she was put in charge of the hand cleaner, the alcohol hand cleaner, et cetera. And everybody had to have some of the alcohol cleaner before they could be served and such. And so many people, you could see it on their face. And a few even said, "Hey, I'm not a dirty person. I'm not.
Right.
Well, we understand that it's not that, but that's where you were going, is that's how they feel, and that's how they've been brought to feel in a lot of cases
Yes.
too.
Yes.
And that's a sad thing. Not everybody can help. Not everybody wants to help. Some people will just look down on people because they just will, and some people are just bad people. I'm convinced of that. And I hate to see that, but this population needs help, and there are people like you that are reaching out and making a difference. And I know that you started there's a Facebook page for Ryan's Reach,
Yes.
and I noted off of there, and I have it in my notes here on the Facebook page for Ryan's Reach. It says, "I don't have a solution on how to cure mental illness, yet I know we can do better in caring for our neighbors that suffer from this debilitating illness. This is my heart's mission, to offer a helping hand so that they will know that they matter." And
Yes.
those words are so true, because sometimes just being able to talk to somebody, sometimes the meal, sometimes the drink, sometimes the just somebody knowing that someone cares for you can make all of the difference, because it is hard out there. And
Yes.
I think this is just great with what you're doing. And not that this was, you've always felt this way. This has been in your genes, shall we say, from the very beginning. This is the person that you are. And this was granted, this grew out of tragedy, certainly, but that this is who you are, and that this can be Ryan's legacy, that you are doing your part to share his story and to have his legacy live on. And I think that's just great.
Yes, I mean, that is exactly it. And, a person that I told you I sat down on the ground with today, and he kept adjusting his clothing, and he was like brushing the crumbs off, and he's like, I'm usually not this dirty. And I'm like, I don't think you're dirty. And I'm given the COVID and all that, I know you have to be careful, but I am not. I'm going to be the first person to shake someone's hand. I'm going to put my hand on their shoulder and say, no, you are worthy. You are. And he kept saying, no, stop it. And I'm like, no, you are worthy. You are worth something. And you cannot discount yourself. And he kept saying, well, that girl left me. And I'm like, well, her loss. I'm like, you move on. You do the things that you are meant to do. And I just, my heart breaks over and over and over when I think of Ryan, and I have a photo album in the bottom of one of my drawers that I just happened to open this drawer about 6 weeks ago, and I saw it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that has all the pictures of Ryan as a baby, and I couldn't look at it. I couldn't. I shut that drawer, and I still can't.
Yep.
And it's hard. It's so hard to imagine your child dead. It's so hard to think, like, after Ryan passed, every time I would drive, I would imagine, a body in my car, and how could you not stop? And I don't hold that person responsible. I don't. Ryan was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I know this. But I just wish he would have held his hand while he was dying.
Yeah.
And I would have been so grateful. But instead, he died in the middle of the street, and someone finally saw him and positioned their car so that no one else would run over him. And as a mom, as someone who, yes, Ryan, I didn't speak to Ryan for years, but not out of not wanting to, out of not being able to reach him and locate him. Your heart doesn't harden because of the years that have passed. It doesn't. There are days where it's almost more than you can take, and you have to really shift and think of something else, and because there's nothing you can do. But to hear those words, Ryan has been killed.
Yeah.
I will never, ever, ever not hear that again. And so every time I go out and every person I talk to, I say, hey, I want to let you know that I'm doing this because my heart is here. My heart is right here with you. And I want to help you. And this is what happened to my son. And then they tell me similar stories. They're like, yeah, I just took drugs yesterday. And I'm like, well, why, what, are you going to do it again? What would help you? And there are a lot of what is termed career homeless, where they are. It's what they do. It's what they, I don't know. It's what they feel safe in. Yeah. It's what they've done. But you know what? I don't care. I don't care. If I can make that one career homeless person feel like, oh my gosh, today I mattered, and they can go to bed and tuck that memory away with them, then you know what? I've done what I needed to do.
Absolutely. We are all on this spinning ball together. And as we say here, disagree doesn't mean dislike. We're not all going to like each other and we're not all going to agree on everything. And that's okay. That's what makes us who we are. We're able to rationalize out different things and talk about different things. And Shanda, my heart goes out to you because I cannot imagine someone hitting a person with their car and just leaving. I, in my paramedic days, I did deal with several of those, obviously from the patient side. And um, if I told you who, which I won't, but if I told you, you would remember the incident. And that's terrible. But that's not who I am. I couldn't do that.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have from this is that we are all in this together.
Yeah.
I told you earlier that the reason that we changed our format here on the show was that we wanted to get more positive content out there, not just this political whatever, because we know we had a very big political week, and that's not what this is about. This is we need to help each other. We are all in this together, and there are people that need our help. And if we are in a position to, we should be doing that. And some people have different means where they can help, and some people don't have as much. And it I can't do that. That's socialism. No, that's not where this is going. This is basic human content. Sometimes people just need somebody to talk to. And I think what you're doing with Ryan's Reach is great. I know you're doing everything that you can, and knowing you want to and plan to do more because that's just you. And I think that the Ryan's Reach program is definitely, it's a great thing. I can see it growing. What can our listeners do? First of all, how can they find the Ryan's Reach program? And secondly, what can they do? What can they do to help?
Well, go to go on Facebook and just like the page Ryan's Reach. And I honestly, I'm not asking for anything from anybody. I am doing this all my own funds and everything. I mean, I would never say you couldn't, but I just want everyone to know that it's just that easy. And you don't have to commit to doing it for the rest of your life or doing it for the next month. You go out one time and you do this, you make some simple, you could bring water bottles and granola bars. That one time you go out, you don't know who you're touching. You don't know. And that's all it may take. But I just want people to see how easy it is and how important it is. My gosh, we can't disregard these people that society sees as dirty and just there. No, they're our neighbors. They're our sons, they're our daughters, they're our mothers, our fathers. They're the people we know. And we can't let them be alone. We need to help in even if it only means sustaining them until they're gone.
Yeah. One of the several of the biggest things that I came in contact with during the winter season in northern Nevada there was that socks were in big
Yes, yes, yes.
gloves, heavier coats, socks in particular. And one of the things that would happen to me quite frequently, my partners and I, we would be sitting somewhere or coming back out from the hospital, and people would walk up very sheepishly and say, "Hey, REMSA guy." REMSA was the agency that I worked
Yes,
for, and say,
yes,
"Hey, REMSA guy, can I get a blanket?"
yes.
And yeah, you can. They, we had one-time use blankets that were individually wrapped, and I would go back to the back of the ambulance and grab one, and yeah, did it cost the company money? Yeah. And would they be mad at me for doing that? No,
Right.
because I was just doing what I could do. They asked me for a
Yes.
blanket. What am I going to? I know people that would say no, unfortunately,
Yes. We all
but
do.
yeah, now get a job, get it. No,
Right.
take this, and maybe because I don't want you to be the one in that day. I don't want you to be the one that I have to come and pick up tonight or several days later, and you're frozen. I don't want to do that.
Right.
And you only
I
have to do
have
that one time to never forget that either. On a parent.
exactly. And one time, and this was quite a while ago, I mean, a couple of decades ago, I had bought there. I was going to my, my regular grocery shopping. It was late at night. The kids were asleep. And there was a woman out kind of on the corner, huge, like a corner with tons of traffic coming by. And she had a baby in a stroller. And she had a sign like, I need to eat. So I did my shopping and I bought things that I thought would be great, like peanut butter, like bread, things like that that would keep. And I had this grocery bag, and I remember I was so proud. I was so pleased with myself, and I handed it to her. And she looked at me and she said, "Could I get some money?"
Yeah.
And that kind of like shattered me. But and I remember I went home and I, told my friend, and they're like, "Well, yeah, that's what happens." But it doesn't matter. You, and I don't want to bring religion into this because I have my faith. Oh my gosh, I believe in God. I have backed away from the organized religion, but I am there with my faith. And God doesn't ask us to like decide, oh, well, that person's going to really appreciate it. And that person, oh, they're going to move forward because of it. Nope. You just do what is needed and you walk away, or, you don't think of what, are they going to take that help? Were they happy with it? Like that one lady where she really wanted the money. It doesn't matter. I helped.
Yeah.
And that's what matters. And we all need to do that because we all can, even those that can't give much. I know there's something that we can all do. Maybe it's just conversation or friendship for that day. But especially in today's times, we need to reach out and ask those questions. And now with our children going, the hybrid learning, the online learning, it's a disaster. And it is not, the teachers are doing amazing. But you know what? Ask those questions. If you see your child, being a little aloof or not what they are, don't be okay because it's not really interfering with your life. Ask those questions. How are you doing? And, what's going on? And don't take, oh, I'm okay for an answer. Don't, because these are hard times and our kids need us right now more than ever, because 5-6 years from now, we aren't going to have any more control over them. And I hate to say control, but right now we can help them. And this is a hard time for these kids, a really hard time. I tutor and what I hear most is, it's so funny. They all say COVID-19. They don't call it Corona. They don't call it COVID. It's COVID-19. And they all say, oh, I'm so tired of COVID-19. And I drive by schools and I see the playgrounds roped off with like crime scene tape,
Yeah.
Because they can't play on them. And they're instructed to, you sit here, you sit here, you sit here. This is scary for them. Even if they're back in school, this is scary for them. Make sure they're okay. I mean, we can only do what we can do right now, but you know what? You reaching out as a parent is going to make the difference, and take it from someone who probably really screwed up and didn't ask, are you okay enough?
You don't want that phone call.
No,
Nobody
you don't want that phone call.
Nobody wants that phone call.
No.
Shanda, will you come back and see us and let us know how the Ryan's Reach program and what you're involved in there in Reno Sparks is going? Will you come back on and give us an update?
Oh my gosh, I would be so honored. Thank you.
Absolutely. Guys, our guest today has been Shanda Estrada.
It's okay. Everyone says that.
Duh. It's like growing up with Jeffrey with a G, I'm sure. Shanda Estrada from Reno, Nevada has been our guest today. She's the founder of Ryan's Reach, and all of the information on how to get in contact with Ryan's Reach will be in our show notes, and we encourage you to take a look. And if there's something you can do to help out, please do. And if nothing else, keep positive thoughts for Shanda and her family and everything that she's working on. And she'll come back and see us and give us an update of what's going on. We certainly appreciate her time. Guys, this is the Papa Geoff's America program. Sit tight. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us today for the Papa Geoff's America program. Check out more episodes of our podcast at papageoffusa.com. You can subscribe through the link on our website or wherever you get your podcasts. We're on all the major platforms. papageoffusa.com is your home for Papa Geoff's America. While you're there, you can check out more episodes of the broadcast, check out the OG Corner, get in contact with us, and you can even link to all of our social media. Please share our broadcast on all of your social media because sharing is caring. And if you would like to help us keep our broadcast content free, please click on the Buy Me a Coffee link. You know how much Papa Geoff loves his coffee. And while we're on the subject of you, we want to hear from you. Your thoughts and comments and suggestions are what make this program go. Send us an email at our website, papageoffusa.com, or you can text us at area code 281-940-6980. Message and data rates may apply. Remember to wear that mask. Stay home if you can. Practice social distancing. Wash your hands frequently. And let's all take care of each other. Remember, disagree doesn't mean dislike. We're all in this together. Thanks again for joining us. We're looking forward to seeing you next time when we continue the conversation, one podcast at a time.